Yeah, what's good? What's up? What's up? We got another one. This the story of Regis Deon Thomas. Today, back on my watch tip. Today I'm gonna be reading the court cases of one of the biggest cases in the 90s in the Nickerson Gardens. One of the biggest stories in Watts history. And let's go, let's get to it. Thomas was born on June 16, 1970. He was the oldest of 4 children, and he grew up in the Nickerson Garden projects, and he was a member of the Bonihana Bloods. In January 1992, Carlos Atkins was shot to death in an apartment of Janice Chapel, located in the Nickerson Gardens housing projects in Los Angeles. Andre and Janice Chapel and their fan, Bertrand Dixon, witnessed the shooting. Dixon, who was visiting Andre Chapel, went out to purchase some cigarettes. When returning, he thought he heard someone call out his nickname. Believing it to be his friend Romeo, he responded by calling out, "Romeo, down here." Thomas, who was driving by, called out to him, "You don't know me. Don't try to sell me nothing." Dixon explained that he had not been talking to the defendant. As he walked in towards Chapel's apartment, Dixon saw the defendant pointing out a gun from the window of his car. Dixon went inside the apartment where Atkins was playing chess with Andre Chapel. He heard a banging at the door. Chapel opened the door and the defendant entered, making angry remarks. The defendant had a gun at his side. Dixon explained that he was calling out to his friend Romeo, and he had not been trying to sell anything to the defendant. Carlos Atkins then stood up. Defendant asked him, So what you want to do? I know you would tell me. And hit Atkins with a gun. Atkins stated that he was not named Tillman. The defendant told him to shut up. Janice Chapel, who had been asleep upstairs, was awakened by the sounds of arguing and walked downstairs. She observed a defendant Atkins, Andre Chapel, and Dixon in the living room. Defendant appeared to be angry. Andre Chapel appeared to be trying to calm him down. As the defendant started to leave the apartment, he was walking to the door. He apologized to Janice Chapel for the disturbance and stated to the man in the apartment, "Y'all don't know who I am." Dixon thought he heard the defendant identify himself as Renzi. Atkins then stated to the defendant, "You don't know who I am either." The defendant came back inside, placed the gun between Atkins' eyes, and threatened to blow his brains out. Atkins grabbed the gun, and a struggle ensued during which 2 shots were fired. Dixon ran out the apartment and called 911. When he went to meet the ambulance, he was stopped by the defendant and another man. They told him not to say anything about the incident, and they pistol whipped him. The 2 men forced Dixon into the trunk of their car at gunpoint, but Dixon got out and ran away. Atkins subsequently died of gunshot wounds to the right lower chest. The next day, Dixon informed his parole officer that he had witnessed a shooting and was advised to contact the police. When he initially met with the detectives, he described the shooting and told the officers that the shooter's name was Renzi. Subsequently, Dixon met with a local man named Renzi, who Dixon knew was not the killer. He informed the police that he learned the correct name was Regis. Dixon identified the defendant's picture in a photographic display and later select him during a live lineup. Janice Chapel also picked the defendant's picture from a photographic display, indicating that he looked like the man who shot Carlos Atkins. Several months later, the defendant was identified during a traffic stop and arrested on a warrant for the shooting of Carlos Atkins. In September of 1992, Dixon, who was then incarcerated, was transported to the Compton courthouse for the defendant preliminary hearing. He was placed in a holding cell with the defendant, who asked him why was he going to testify. The defendant stated that he had not meant to do it, and it had been his girlfriend's birthday. He had argued with her, and he was upset. He just went off. The defendant told Dixon that Dixon didn't want to end up like Andre Chappell. Dixon was aware that Andre had died. He understood the defendant to be saying that if he testified, he could not go back to the projects. The defendant offered to give Dixon $5,000 if he turned the cheek. Dixon told the prosecutor that he had identified the wrong defendant and was released. The defendant was subsequently recharged with the murder of Atkins at the trial. Dixon identified as a person who shot Atkins. Dixon had been promised that if he testified, he would serve his sentence outside of Los Angeles County. If he was convicted on a pending burglary charge, Janice Chappell also testified that the defendant looked like the person who shot Atkins, stating that she was 98% certain he was the man. Andre Chappell did not testify because he has been shot and killed in the Nixon Gardens projects, March in 1992. In March of 1992, the defendant purchased a red 1992 Chevrolet 454 pickup truck. Late at night, February 22nd, 1993, Compton police officer Kevin Burrell and reserve officer James McDonald made a traffic stop at a red pickup truck on Rosecrans Avenue in Compton. Margaretta Gully was driving past the scene, accompanied by her son, 12-year-old Demarie Polidor, in the front seat, and her 11-year-old daughter and her older son's girlfriend, Alicia Jordan, in the back seat. Through the windshield of the car, Gully observed two officers, one black and one white, struggling with a suspect. A red pickup truck was parked nearby with the door on the driver's side open. Just after Gully passed the scene, she heard shots fired through her rearview mirror. She saw the suspect straddling one of the officers who was lying on the ground. Her son Polidor heard the shots and looked through the back window, observing the suspect shoot the white officer in the head. Polidor then observed the suspect get in the truck and drive away. As the truck passed their car, Jordan saw the driver's face through the window of the car. At the trial, Gully, Polidor, and Jordan testified that the defendant had all the same features and the same body type as the suspect they observed. Both officers were found lying face down near the police vehicle. Both police officers were in uniform with their guns holstered. There were 9 spent 9mm shell casings in front of their vehicle. Officer Burrell died of multiple gunshot wounds, one to the arm, one to the face, one to the left foot, and one to the head. Officer McDonald was shot 4 times in the left armpit, in the middle back, in the upper back, and behind the right ear, and died of wounds to the chest. Thomas' wife, Deshauna Cody Thomas, testified on the evening of the day the officers were killed. Thomas left her apartment in his red pickup truck, stating that he was going to his mother's house in the Nixon Gardens. When she woke up the next morning, the defendant was in her bed and he had his gun in his hand. Defendant friend Keon Pye testified sometime in February 1993, Thomas arrived at her house and asked her to hold a gun for him. He gave her a gun wrapped in a bag and she placed it under her mattress. The next day, a man she had never seen before came and picked the gun up. That man, Calvin Cooksey, testified that on February 24th or 25th, he was at the apartment of his cousin, Philip Cathcart, in Gardena. Thomas, who was a very close friend of Cooksey, cousin arrived at the apartment. Cooksey was watching a news broadcast related to the shootings of the two officers. Cooksey looked at Thomas, who appeared to be jittery, and Thomas said, "Yeah, I did it. They slipped." Cooksey understood that slip meant that the officers failed to take precaution. Thomas told Cooksey that when Officer Burrell approached the truck, the defendant kicked the door open and shot him in the chest. He then shot Officer McDonald in the face while he was still in his police car. He then shot each of the officers 3 more times. Cooksey told Thomas he did not believe him, but shortly thereafter, he asked Thomas where the gun was and offered to dispose of it. Thomas showed Cooksey a house and told Cooksey to return there later and to obtain the gun. When Cooksey returned, the woman in the house gave him a bag, which contained a Sig Sauer 9mm pistol. He sold the gun to Robert Rojas. In early March 1993, Thomas was questioned in connection with the shooting of the officers, but was released. He told Cooksey, "They think I did it, but they can't prove it. Somebody is going to have to tell on me in order for them to bust me on this." In mid-March 1993, Cooksey was arrested while in possession of a firearm. A few days later, Cooksey called a sheriff deputy with whom he was familiar as a result of a prior arrest and told him that he knew who had killed the officers and that he knew the location of the gun used in the shooting. Cooksey told the deputy that the name of the killer was Regis or Regis Thomas. He described the sale of the gun. In a subsequent discussion with another deputy, Cooksey asked for help with pending charges and told the deputy about the sale of the gun and about the conversation in which Thomas admitted to shooting the officers. Shortly thereafter, Cooksey was released from county jail and accompanied by a detective, Rojas. Cooksey told Rojas he wanted to buy back the gun. Rojas contacted Cooksey the next day and informed him that if he could get the gun, Cooksey met Rojas, paid for the gun, and gave it to the detective. Ballistics evidence indicated that the cartridge casings found at the scene of the shootings of the officers were fired from this gun. The jury found Thomas guilty of first-degree murders of police officer Kevin Burrell and James McDonald, and found true special circumstances allegations of multiple murder and murder of police officer. Thomas dropped the ball when he told Cooksey everything. He probably thought he could trust him, but when he told him that they think I did it, but the only way I can go down for this, let somebody put me and pin my name on it. Next thing you know, Cooksey had that, oh yeah, that was a trump card in the back of his brain. He like, oh yeah, that's that get out of jail free card telling him that. It's just crazy. Them senseless murders gotta stop. You gotta think things straight. A lot of people live in the heat of the moment. Like he said, he had an argument and he snapped. You could snap one time and it'll cause you the rest of your life. And that's exactly what happened. He had a power trip. And now look what happened. Look at the results of everything that led up to one thing. But I just wanted to give an RIP to Andre Chappell. RIP Carlos Atkins. God bless the people who all died in this case.